What's up, everybody? We're back with another LFG Mack Flash, LFG Leisure Fan Gab. And the whole point of this show is for a couple fans to get together and chat leisurely about things we love. And what we're going to talk about today is something we all love, and it's Super Bowl week. Super Bowl is going to be this Sunday from SoFi Stadium. It's going to be the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Los Angeles Rams, Joe Burrow versus Matthew Stafford. I am joined by AB, Andrew Brien.
What's up?
Fans of Mack Flash music will remember Jersey Jim. Big Game Jimbo is joining us today. Gentlemen, how are you guys?
I'm good. I'm pretty tired just from like being out and about as it's a blizzard now as we're currently filming. So it's it was a tough ride home that I was doing some stuff. So but I'm doing great now. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to have some fun.
So. Jim, how you doing, pal? Good to see you, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, like AB said, I never knew going out for a haircut would be such a harrowing experience. But no, I'm happy to do this. Happy to be back. It's been, almost 6-7 months since we actually filmed one of these. So I'm excited to talk about it, and it's great.
And this is your first LFG. So LFG was born of the ashes of the old Mack Flash 5 and Mack Flash music. And basically what we're doing in this episode, this is much just a buddies talk show. This would be the same kind of conversation we would have as if we were at Manchester or we were in my car driving to the movies or in the States pop hunting, whatever we would do. This show, this little area is to talk about things, that we want to talk. And AB and Matt Robbins and I have been doing recaps of the Book of Boba Fett, and we're thinking of other fun stuff we want to do. So as we talked, we knew that we were going to come on. We're going to talk today about our top 5 favorite NFL quarterbacks of past and present, top 5. And it was great because this isn't something like Mack Flash music or movies where you really have to stress and do a lot of homework. Aside from taking maybe 5-10 minutes out of your time, this is all going to be personal lists, and it's something that we're all very passionate and happy and easy to talk about. So
and it's our favorites. It's not who we think is the greatest. It's not these like, I mean, the first guy I'm going to talk about is by no means even remotely in the conversation of the greatest quarterback. So
no doubt, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's just for fun, kind of reminiscing about watching football, as we were younger, and at least for me anyway. And so it's just gonna good time of just chatting up football as we gear up for the Super Bowl.
As we, like I said, this is going to kick off Super Bowl Media Week, so there's going to be interviews. There's going to be the awards on Thursday. The Pro Bowl was just the other day, and certainly we're all just very excited. As football fans, this is the last game that matters for the next essentially 9 months. So unless there's anything else we want to chat, AB, why don't you kick us off? Kick us off with your number 5 favorite NFL quarterback ever.
All right, we're going to start off with my number 5, and this is a guy who when I was a young lad, probably about 7 or 8 years old, there was an exciting football team that was doing very well, and there was a guy at the center of that, and I'm going to grab a little prop here. It's not white, but I'm going to put it on.
Hell yeah.
So there was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Jim Mcmahon who was playing for the Chicago Bears, who were a very, very good football team. Jim Mcmahon was a serviceable quarterback on that team. He certainly didn't lose them games. He wasn't the greatest quarterback, but he was a lot of fun to watch on and off the field. And when as an 8-year-old kid, you have this guy who is just like all swagger, wearing the sunglasses on the sidelines with the the things. He's in interviews wearing like crazy outfits. He's pulling pranks on people. He's showing up at different events, and he's just a blast to watch. And like I said, you go through his stat lines, and they're pretty pedestrian compared to a lot of the guys we'll probably talk about. But there was just something that was like just screamed fun about this guy, and later on in life, like he's one of those guys that really spoke his mind, and got in a lot of trouble for saying stuff, especially later on in life. And he had a lot of he spoke out a lot about a lot of the CTE stuff, and which was good, I guess. But like I said, he was just a fun dude to have around. One thing, when I was looking up some fun facts about him, I'm gonna take this off because this is too small for my head. Looking up some fun facts, I did not I'm not a college football guy, and I did not know he went to Brigham Young University. So he was a product of BYU.
Two Brigham Youngs.
What are you talking about? So he was a 2-time All-American at Brigham Young, and he was actually inducted into the College Hall of Fame, which I thought was pretty neat. Drafted by Chicago, and played with them for a few years, and then kind of traveled around the NFL, and before kind of phasing out. But like I said, I wanted to start off fun. And I looked all over for it, and I'm pretty sure it's at my parents' house under their stairs. But I have, from when I was a little kid, the Jim McMahon starting lineup action figure, which if you took off his helmet, he's wearing the white headband, and that was on my shelf for like forever. And so I tried to find it, tried to track it down. I could not find it for the show, but I would have loved to have had it. Like I said, there was that few year window when I was a little like basically a child, that one of the things that really got me into football. And there was I brought it down so I could talk to it, but I'm going to bring it back up. There was another reason why I love the '85 Bears, and that would be the Super Bowl Shuffle. Of course, you have the NFL dudes rapping and dancing, playing instruments.
This is pro wrestling. This is MTV pro wrestling and football all rolled into one.
And like for 8-year-old AB, you have a bunch of NFL players rapping on a rap music video. This is pure unadulterated gold. So that was one of the all-time highs for me, was seeing those guys rap on it, for better or for worse. It's funny, I saw a thing years later, and a woman was interviewing, and they're kind of interviewing Ice Cube, and they're kind of making fun of the video, and they're rating each guy's rapping ability, and he got to Jim McMahon, and she was like kind of like ooh, and but there's a couple of guys on there that are actually pretty great. Samurai Mike Singletary is actually pretty solid in it. He's probably got some pretty good verses on there. Got a pretty good verse, but I mean, Super Bowl Shuffle. If you've never seen the Super Bowl Shuffle, please do yourself a favor. Google that thing into type that into YouTube, and have 3.5 minutes of good times, because it is a lot of laughs. So that's my number 5, is Jim McMahon from the Chicago
Awesome.
Bears.
Jimmy, one of the coolest cats in football history. That's a good number 5.
Yeah, absolutely. And a guy that a lot of his players really loved too.
Yep.
Like guys that would go through walls for certain people. And he played hurt. Like he played a ton hurt too.
Yep.
Like if you ever see it on YouTube, when he got dropped by Charles Martin of the Green Bay Packers, who basically just suplexed him to the ground. Like that was the start of a lot of his neck issues that he's having later in his life. You might have seen the '85 Bears ESPN 30 for 30, where he's had his neck alignment issues.
Yep.
But he would play tough. He would play hurt. Dove head first. Never slid. Probably should have slid a couple times, but he always gave maximal effort when he was there. And yeah, Jim McMahon is just a pop culture icon in the '80s. Honda scooter. Yeah. He made Honda scooters cool. I mean, if you can do that, you're a pretty fly guy.
That's great.
Cool. Jim, take us in. What do you got? Who do you got for 5?
All right, I'm going to cue this up. Now, my number 5, and when I was doing this list, I kind of realized that a bunch of quarterbacks that I have on this list, like, I don't really love them, but I like them a lot. And this guy was from my second favorite team. I'm a Detroit Lions fan, but my second team has always been the San Francisco 49ers. AB, you'll love that. You know that. This guy and 4 of the 5 on my list actually started out in a different league before they got into the NFL. And this guy was no exception.
Oh, we're going to another BYU alumni here?
No, we're not talking about Ty Detmer. You thought there was only 2, but there's a 3rd. But no, this guy actually started out at San Jose State, kind of a little guy, so he was looked over by the NFL, but he got his start backing up another quarterback who'll be on my list for the Calgary Stampeders, and that was a guy by the name of Jeff Garcia. And I hope
Jeff Garcia in the news now. In the news now for the beef he's picking. We'll talk about that in a minute. But topical choice.
Oh man,
and I hope I mastered the trading card look of the graphics that I'm going for here.
Cool. I love our slides.
But Jeff Garcia, actually, when he started out with the Calgary Stampeders, he was a backup, but he played so well. He moved up. He ended up winning a Grey Cup in his last game in the CFL after a 4-year stint, beat the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the 1998 Grey Cup. If I remember correctly, Bill Walsh was so impressed with him, and Bill Walsh, as you know, is a guy that really likes his athletic, mobile quarterbacks, kind of likes the outlier type guys who are athletes, picked him up, backing up the number 1 on my list later on, but injuries happened and he moved in. And when you're following legends like the San Francisco 49ers had for quarterbacks for 20 years, like they had a 20-year stretch where they were set. He did a pretty admirable job. He, didn't reach the highs of the 5 Super Bowls that the San Francisco 49ers had during the 80s and 90s. But for a 5-year stretch, he put up some really solid numbers, got them back into the playoffs, really thrived in the West Coast offense, hitting up Terrell Owens for a really good combination before some personality clashes.
If it looks like a duck and walks like a duck.
No, it's a rat. It's a rat.
Yeah.
Was it rat? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yet he's married to a Playboy playmate.
Oh my gosh. And that was the craziest thing about it. It was like he had the hottest girlfriend.
Teal's one of my favorite football players, my second favorite wide receiver of all time. And it's like you're calling your quarterback gay and he's married to a Playboy model.
Yeah.
You're losing this battle, brah.
Yeah.
And then it kind of just ruined this. Like the morale on the team kind of just sunk. San Francisco fell into a big lull. And then Garcia left and he ended up being a journeyman for the rest of his career. He bumped from Cleveland, where he ended up getting released in half the season. The Lions, he didn't favor well, but then he kind of rejuvenated his career. He went to Philadelphia, he went to Tampa Bay, and admirably filled in and led those 2 teams to back-to-back playoff appearances. So not a stellar Hall of Fame career, but he's definitely in the Hall of Good, if not Hall of Very Good. And as a 49ers fan growing up, I always rooted for those guys. I still kind of root for them today, even though I'm a Lions fan. And, last week was really hard with
yeah, it was.
Yeah, I was torn between that game because it had some emotions lingering, but Jeff Garcia definitely had a very serviceable, if not very good career, and he is my number 5 on this list.
I'll never forget watching a playoff game against the Giants where they had the last second Hail Mary.
That's what I was going to say. It was like the 23-point second half comeback or something. It was Shockey's rookie year. And I remember everyone was pumping the Giants and then that Niners team upset them.
Yep. Yeah. And I watched it in my buddy's basement and I was just going berserk and like throwing stuff around the room and just losing my mind. And like it was just one of those moments, those playoff moments that I'll never forget, where I was, what I was doing, and like just having people just look at me like I was an insane person because I was just literally like losing my mind, screaming my face off. And it was just a great game to watch. And you're right, like Garcia, he doesn't get enough love, and I'm glad you put him on here because he gets overshadowed by the obviously the big two, and he kind of plays the third fiddle to that. But he had a lot of great years with the Niners, and he had a lot of, until that beef with T.O., he had a lot of great chemistry with that team. So it was yeah, I'm glad you put it on there.
And it always surprised me because it's like T.O., I don't think ever reached that type of success with anybody else. And even though, he played with McNabb and Romo later on, I always thought him and Garcia in that West Coast offense because Garcia picked it up. T.O. was so enshrined in it, working with Jerry Rice. I always thought they were the best combination. They were always kind of lesser when they were split apart. And so it kind of sucked that the 49ers kind of fell off. But
I mean, you have the 1-2 punch of like you look at the all-time stats, and you have Jerry and you have T.O. Who do you cover on that
And
team?
T.O. famously got the 20 catch game on Jerry Day.
Yeah, like that. I mean, that's why, right? You were like, you have to cover Jerry. So guess what? Guess who's going to be, single coverage the entire day? It was Terrell Owens, also one of the greatest wide receivers. So it was just money.
Hell yeah,
money.
Cool. Great. Number 5. I'm going to close out the 5s here, guys. So I'm so excited for this. So when we started and we were debating, I said this off camera, my 1, 2, and 3 were locked, padlocked. They have not changed. My 4 has changed a few times. And then by proxy, some of the 4s became my 5. But I said, you know what? I want to save my 5 spot for this gentleman because this is a guy that his trajectory at the quarterback position, certainly for me, was not only transcending the on pace to be my favorite quarterback of all time, he was in the conversation to be one of my all-time favorite athletes. And I'd be remiss if I didn't put him on because there's a lot to discuss about this man, both on the football field and off the football field. And my number 5 is Michael Vick.
I knew it. I knew that was going to be on there. Nice.
So I'm going to be talking about Michael Vick, and we're going to be talking about the good, and I'd hope to have a good conversation about subsequently the bad about this man. So let's go back to 2000, Scott Despins, getting in high school, cover of Sports Illustrated, Mr. Electric. I could never get rid of this jersey. Even in 2006, I had this jersey. I said I can never bring myself to get rid of, and I've always kept it buried, and there's a reason for it. So 2000, he's on the cover of the NCAA Sports Illustrated preview, Mr. Electric. And I remember once he's drafted first overall to the Atlanta Falcons, the Falcons famously trading up to take Michael Vick first overall in that draft, swapping with San Diego, and he's staying close to home in Atlanta. And he comes in, and I remember a ton of hype on this guy in 2001 and 2002. I'm in high school, and me and my friends are, once he gets the starting job and he's off to the races, literally and figuratively as the starting quarterback, changing the game of football. I mean, there's always been running and rushing quarterbacks throughout history, and there always will be. But for me, at that time, as a 13-year-old football fan who is a football fan in the pro internet era with Napster being able to download videos and things like this and highlights that he had, and the super cool thing is this Powerade commercial where he throws the football 200 yards. Is this real? Is it not? You don't know. This was such a joy to the mystique of this man, Michael Vick. And then he goes on and he goes into Lambeau, and Brett Favre never loses when it's minus 15. Rewatch this game. He didn't have his best game, but my God, that game rules. And you're like, he's changing the game, the position of what it means to be a quarterback. And this is the time when I discover Any Given Sunday, and I love the character of Willie Beeman. And that movie comes out in 1999 and kind of predicts, the football landscape for Michael Vick. And I'm just like, I'm at the forefront of how he's going to change the game of football. And as he goes in, he gets the cornrows, he gets the cover of Madden. They get the super cool jerseys there. I always love those Falcons jerseys when they got those for I believe the 04 season. I was like, they look incredible. He's in rap videos, he's keeping 100 kind of with the AI mystique. He's got the baggy clothes, he's got the hood rat lifestyle, and I'm eating it up because I'm like, oh my God, this guy is is taking the predominantly white position of quarterbacking and turning it on its head. And this is what's here to stay now. And now, as I said, and as you guys know, I love the story of Icarus, of people who fly too close to the sun and their hubris swallows them whole. And there's no athlete, maybe short of Tiger Woods, who in my lifetime exemplifies the story of Icarus, and then Michael Vick. And he goes to prison. He goes to prison for 21 months for his part in a dogfighting ring and a dogfighting scandal. Very, very polarizing return with the Philadelphia Eagles at this time, right? A lot of people don't like that he's coming back, and a lot of people don't want him, but the Eagles take him. They take him as a backup to McNabb, ultimately Kevin Cobb as well, too. He's the third string on the depth chart. He's run as a receiver, halfback, wildcat, whatever. At least he's there, and at least he's committed to being a good teammate and not a shithead like he was in Atlanta. And then you get some great moments. He comes out. He comes as the starter. He's the quarterback of the Miracle of the Meadowlands game. He's his incredible Monday night game, 6 touchdowns, and for all by accounts, when he's the starting quarterback of the Eagles in that 4-year stretch, he makes 1 Pro Bowl. But he's a consummate professional, and he's totally changed his paradigm as not only a quarterback but a human. Finishes his career with the Jets and Steelers as mostly a backup as well, too. And you'll see his stats there as well. But the main thing I do want to talk about Michael Vick, and the reason why I wanted to put him on, is because I'll always have the memories of what he meant to me in high school. And like I said, that trajectory, if he had continued with Atlanta and kind of just, had a Super Bowl win and kind of went through and just ultimately faded off, he'd probably be my favorite athlete of all time. Now there's the prison and stuff, and it stops and starts his career for the worse. But in coming out of prison, you can't deny that here's a guy who has been successfully changed by the American penal correction process. And this is a man who swore to do better for himself and his family in getting out. Time served and being able to come out and rejoin in his working career. And I've always admired that. He's an exceptional analyst now. He does a lot of podcasts and a lot of speeches and a lot of talks. I will always download. He just did a long 2.5 hours with Ryan Russillo, and where he talks about prison, and he talks about the gambling in prison and playing basketball and who was stepping to him. And he's very candid about that stuff. But I just think for his ability to revolutionize the football position, how his highlights age exceptionally well. And for the man he was before prison and post-prison, I knew that for, how polarizing he is, I ultimately wanted to make known that my number 5 favorite QB of all time would be Michael Vick.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a thrill to watch at all times. Like you're going to see exciting plays from him at all times. And he made things happen where you never thought they would. And I always equated him to, a Barry Sanders kind of player at the quarterback position, where he was unpredictable, right? You didn't know what he was going to do, what moves he would do. A lot of the players, they have moves, right? They have a set of moves that they do, and that, even like a Mahomes, he does crazy stuff. But when you watch him a lot, it's you kind of pick up a pattern with that. With Michael Vick, he was all over the place. Like he had no idea what he was going to do.
Yeah,
and he was just
in overtime, the overtime game against the Vikes, how he scrambles for 60 yards, and you're just like, at any second, this game's changing. If he wants to take it over, he can throw 70 yards on a dime, or he can just run up 70 yards in 4 seconds flat. And you're just like, we had scrambling quarterbacks before him. Randall Cunningham, Doug Williams won the Super Bowl as a black quarterback. But Michael Vick coming in, like I said, at the turn of the century, the new millennium. And I'm like, this is what quarterbacking in the new millennium for 14-year-old Scott with the internet and Madden is going to look like.
Yeah, he defined the Madden generation, too. I mean, people immediately cover athlete from Madden 2004, part of the Madden curse, obviously, because he got hurt during the 2003 season. But he was unstoppable in that game, playing with them every time.
I would call people out for using. Yeah.
You would always scramble out up the sideline touchdown.
And it was like you're not allowed to use the Falcons.
It's Bo with Technobowl. I didn't play Technobowl, but it's Bo with Technobowl.
Yeah, because I was like, you're not allowed to use them because it's impossible to cover it. So yeah, it's funny. I didn't even think about that until you just made me think about it. That like him in that game, and like controlling him in that game was even so much fun. The moves that you could do is just hilarious.
Mhm. The game became more lifelike, became a little bit more
Yeah,
graphically friendly towards this generation, and people like to freewheel in Madden, and he kind
yeah,
of fit that freestyle generation for everybody. And I want to add one more thing. Like, I know dogfighting is it's a very tough topic to talk about. He wasn't the first either. I mean, there were actually some serious issues with the Dallas Cowboys back in the day in the 90s
oh yeah,
that weren't covered because obviously the Dallas Cowboys were, one of
Yeah,
the
the
most
white.
scandalous
Yeah.
teams during the 1990s too.
I have boys will be boys downstairs. Talks
Yeah.
all about everything.
Yeah. And so maybe because it was an isolated problem that he got so covered for that. But it's not the first time. But I do appreciate that he had such a redemptive period. And I
yeah,
think in some cases, I think you gotta, when people have served their time and the justice system has ruled on them, you have to give them a chance to redeem themselves.
I think
Michael
that's the
Vick
big thing. I've made
and
my peace with Michael Vick for
yeah,
that
yeah,
reason.
and
And
Michael Vick has been one of those people that has earned the ability to he's earned his redemption by his actions after he's left.
like you said, he paid his punishment. He did his time, and
Yeah,
he hasn't been in the news for anything since then. So why would you not give him the benefit of the doubt of a second chance?
yeah.
Like that's the thing that's lacking. I think we're going to get into a different topic, or like a greater topic now, but like it
that's the
seems
best
now
thing.
that
That's the reason why I picked Michael Vick. Thank you.
it's one of those things. It's one of those things that now when somebody the whole cancel culture thing, but like now if somebody commits a thing that people don't like, or if a crime or whatever, they're done forever in some people's eyes, and that's not fair. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone makes poor choices, especially when you're younger. And this is you're talking about young rich athletes.
And that's the culture. He was close to home, and
Yeah,
there's an incredible 30 for 30 documentary that came out
yep,
right before the lockdown. We've talked about it before. It's a two-part Michael Vick one, but a lot of the problem was that he was drafted to Atlanta, and a lot of his family lived in the Virginia area, and they were only an hour flight away. So he had all these hanger-oners. And
yeah,
again, he was from the ne'er-do-well family lifestyle, the hood lifestyle. And it's just, you can take somebody out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of them at that time. And he wasn't equipped with the mindset. He was just given all this money and all this fame and all these family members out of the woodwork. And he just got sucked into that lifestyle. You've seen it a million, billion, trillion times before. And it's just the thing.
And like the difference is that he was repentant, and like you said, paid his time and came back from it and made something of himself, and like strived to be a better person. And that's the difference, right? You have these people that are do this kind of stuff and are unrepentant and continue to do terrible stuff, continue to like demand second chances, third chances, fourth chances, AB, and why should you give it if you're not going to be repentant and you're not going to be humbled by that kind of stuff? Then why should we give you a second chance? This is where Michael Vick came back very humbled, very repentant, and like that's the key. And it segues perfectly into my number 4.
I was like, this is gonna be a 4-hour pod. Number 4.
This segues perfectly into my number 4, because my number 4 is the predecessor. You mentioned his name. The predecessor to Michael Vick had a similar kind of to a lesser degree redemption story, and that is Mr. Randall Cunningham. When Randall Cunningham came into the league, I was a little bit older than when Jim McMahon came into the league, but I had never really seen anything like it. We've seen, like we said, we've seen some scrambling quarterbacks, but they were not to this degree of stature. You had basically he came in just he came in '85, so he would have been around the same time as Jim McMahon was winning a Super Bowl. But when he really started to go and play was when I saw him on the Monday Night Football game against the Giants, and he was started doing things that we had never seen like that. And I at that time, I like, now it's commonplace. We see this kind of stuff all the time, players making these moves. but this kind of stuff didn't exist. You didn't see these guys that were like doing these scrambling, eluding, and I had never seen that as a kid. And I was just, this guy was electric and just all over the place. And as he started out, he was doing these kind of plays, but he could also make the big throws. And here's one of the best him make, where he's being chased by Bruce Smith, greatest lineman, eludes him and throws basically a 95-yard touchdown off that play from his own end zone. You have him playing for Minnesota later on, and here in the Detroit area, we would get to see Minnesota games twice a year, so you would get to see him lighted up with Chris Carter and Moss twice a year, basically here. And that was the thing growing up, is that I didn't have cable, so I got network TV, and it was always the local game. I always got to see Lions, so I was all excited when I got to see Randall play. And so just kind of like when I alluded to his one of the other things I didn't mention was he also used to be a punter for the Philadelphia Eagles too, and he at the time he had the second longest punt of all time. And I think it was like the 90-something yard punt. That was it from his own end zone. And so he had a rough life. Going into college, he lost both of his parents within a year's time. When he was 18 years old, he lost both of his parents, and basically was on his own going into college, and kind of threw himself into football, and let football kind of shape who he was. And once he got drafted and once he got into the NFL, he went for that lifestyle that we talked about with Michael Vick, where he was, Mr. Showtime, doing commercials, and, all about the fashion, and, doing all the flair, and it was all about him. And it was all about, it's all about the Randall show, and wanted to do things, and it didn't really care about what the team needed. It was all about what Randall wanted. And so that went on for a while. They didn't really do a whole lot, but then he decided to take a year off of football. He took a full year off, came back with Minnesota, and lit it up. And he had his best season with that. I think it was the 98 Minnesota Vikings was his best season by far. And he came back a humble man. He spent time with his family, kind of away from football, away from the limelight, and just same thing as Michael Vick, came back humble, ready to put in the work, ready to put in the time with the team, and the results showed. He had the best year of his life, or best year of his career, and so I just love you look at his story, and it's one of tragedy, but also of coming back from that. And like I said, he lost both his parents. Later on, his 2-year-old son drowned in his pool, and which devastated their family, and had to come back from that as well. And that that took its toll on him and his family, on his playing time. And so it was just, when you see that kind of stuff, and you see the kind of personal tragedy and that these players, guys overcome and come back from, it's really inspiring. And what I didn't know when I was doing the little research was he became an ordained Protestant minister in Las Vegas, and he's involved in gospel music in Las Vegas, and he has a pretty huge church in Las Vegas. I think it's called Remnant Ministries in Las Vegas, and he is the Reverend Randall Cunningham. Cool. I was like, that's pretty wild to go from this young, brash, cocky dude to this humble Protestant minister now, and that preaches every Sunday. That's pretty wild to go from that to that. And I just when I was listening to interviews to him talking about his journey, his football journey, and his life journey through that whole thing, it was just neat to see like we talked about, the humility and the life lessons that he learned through all that whole thing, and that he's still, still going strong with his family, and now he has a new passion, obviously for music and church. So it's pretty neat. So that's my number 4.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Like he said, when you watch, we would have been comparable ages and probably a little bit different. But when you're 10 or early teens and you see somebody who comes in and just electrifies you in the highlights, Randall was before my time. But again, now most kids who watch it think Lamar is inventing that kind of play of style. So that's just, everyone will have their most exciting quarterback at that time. So
yeah, cool. And the late 80s, early 90s Philadelphia Eagles were a fun team to watch, and especially because they had that. Buddy Ryan had moved on from the Bears to the Eagles. He brought the 46 to the Eagles. Reggie White and Jerome Brown were just terrors. They had, an electric weapon in Randall Cunningham. They could have had Chris Carter, but he had his own issues that he was dealing with at the time. Eagles are kind of what could have been team, but you saw what could have been with the Vikings, because in a sense they had John Randall as their terror pass rusher. You had Chris Carter and Randall Cunningham reunite, and then they had this flashy receiver by the name of Randy Moss just terrorizing, along with Jake Reed and Robert Smith added as weapons. And I saw that team in '98 in Detroit, and man, was it a slaughter. They just they just ate up Detroit.
It's like a team like that, it's tough to cover that thing, especially as we've seen recently with these electric quarterbacks that are the dual threat, is that you can cover your guys. And so that Minnesota team, again, who do you cover? You're gonna double up Chris Carter or Randy Moss and leave the wide open lane for Randall Cunningham to take off and run on that. Like it's one of those things that you add that extra element to a team that's already exciting, and it's just an exciting thing to watch.
Okay, Jim, who do you got it for?
All right, it's actually a perfect lead-in, because actually much how you kind of led into Scott, you led into AB's leading into mine, because he talked about the '98 Vikings, and I'm going to go a year into the future to 1999. And this guy, in the summer of 1999, no one heard of him. He
was my number 4 too. Yeah. This is so funny. I got rid of him, but hell yeah.
Yeah, he was your number 4.
He was my very first, not anymore. But yeah, I'm so happy.
I can go into a little bit more depth then, because 6 months after this guy debuted in the preseason, everyone knew who he was, because not only was he not only was he NFL MVP, he was Super Bowl MVP. That guy, much like myself, a grocery store clerk, got to stick together. Kurt Warner.
What? You really set the table for Dante Culpepper.
How
are you? This is not Dante Culpepper. You're like, we're talking about the Vikings, and I'm going to go a year later, and I'm like, yeah, Dante Culpepper was mine.
We're not talking about the Vikings. He's leading in because an exciting offense in 1998 to an even more exciting offense in 1999.
I was ready to fucking put the big timers on, get my mother roll on. Please, Tell us about the American underdog. That doesn't look like Zachary Levi.
Kurt Warner is a wonderful story, because he came out of nowhere. 1994, he comes in after being in northern Iowa, and he goes into the Green Bay Packers training camp, and they have a loaded quarterback field. They already have Brett Favre starting. He's coming off of his 93 season, where he unfortunately beats the Lions in the 93 wild card. And not only do they have that, but backing him up, they have a Heisman winner from a few years before, Ty Detmer, and a guy who became a really fun quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Mark Brunell. He was a camp arm. He was brought in for about a week or two. Steve Mariucci, Mike Holmgren, the whole staff didn't really see much in Kurt at that time, ended up getting rid of him. So he kind of bounces around, even makes a appearance at the Hy-Vee in Iowa for a little bit, stocking shelves for $5.50, the humblest of origins, and he gives AFL a try. He starts out his professional career work for the Iowa Barnstormers of the AFL. wins a title there, decides to give the 11-man game a try, trying to get any team. So applying in the Midwest, he was supposed to try out for the Chicago Bears, got a spider bite in his right elbow, and so it kind of was a blessing in disguise, because later on, 1998, goes to NFL Europe, gets a tryout with the Rams, progresses up their depth chart to the backup. And of course, as we all know, Rodney Harrison goes low on Trent Green in preseason 1999. We will rally around Kurt Warner and we will play great football. Well, Kurt Warner was only the second man to that point after the 1999 season to throw for more than 40 touchdowns in the season. Only one guy had done that. That was Dan Marino in 1984 in his second year. Kurt Warner did that in his first year of NFL football. Won Super Bowl MVP, won NFL MVP, and probably nearly would have doubled it up again in 2001 had a guy by the name of Tom Brady, who's become, this legend, seven Super Bowls, retired. Congratulations, Tom, on your career. But Kurt Warner had a 3-year span where he was just an absolute dominant beast of a quarterback in St. Louis. And then he struggles for some reason. He starts struggling, breaks his hand, has a whole bunch of issues, gets replaced by Mark Bulger, signs with the New York Giants, but they have Eli Manning ready, waiting in the wings, so he's kind of short-term option there. Goes to Arizona, plays well in his first season, plays okay in his first season, but they have other plans too. They bring in Matt Leinart. And this is about the time where Kurt Warner decides to dig his heels in. No, I'm going to show that I'm going to be the guy here, that I'm the leader of this team, and that I can get these guys to where they need to be. And he ends up outlasting and outplaying Matt Leinart, who was the golden boy from USC, the Heisman Trophy winner, the guy that the franchise was really pinning their hopes behind. And this old, late 30s guy ends up combining with Anquan Bolden and Larry Fitzgerald to form another potent offense and gets them within about a minute of another Super Bowl victory in Arizona. Had Santonio Holmes not toe-tapped in the end zone brilliantly for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And one more bookend for his last great game, 51-45 in the 2009 NFC wildcard game, where he threw for 5 touchdown passes, and I think he only had 4 incompletions in that entire game, while throwing for about 490 yards in that game. But Kurt Warner, Hall of Famer, just got into the Hall of Fame a couple years ago, and a true story of perseverance, never giving up, and, digging your heels in and proving all the doubters, all the naysayers, all the people that said, hey, you come from a small school, you can't do it, you don't have the tools, proving them wrong and thriving. And he's just, as much as I hated him for St. Louis for destroying the 49ers year after year, he became a really redemptive story and a really enjoyable quarterback when he kind of had his trials and tribulations and became redemptive with the Cardinals. So Kurt Warner's my number 4.
I've always never liked Kurt Warner for the exact reason that you're just saying. As a 49er fan, never wanted to see him succeed, but at the same time, you got to admire a story like his where you have a guy who no one expected to be there, no one expected anything from, to rise up and to do what he did. You have to admire that. But it's just like I can't even stand him when I see him come on when they bring him on announcing now. I'm just like,
he's great on the network.
I know he is, but I'm just like, oh, screw you, Kurt Warner.
Two things. Christmas, I want to say 2002 must have been. It got a Kurt Warner jersey. Loved it. It's probably at my parents somewhere. I don't know, maybe probably donated because it was too small. So I definitely love that Warner jersey. And how can you not like the nickname, The Greatest Show on Turf? Probably one of my favorite team nicknames of all time. So that's a great number 4. You just spoke on a Hall of Famer. Let's double it. Let's run it back. We're going to talk about another Hall of Famer. We're going to go to the tip top of the pyramid. So if my number 1 or my number 5, Michael Vick, was a first overall pick who came in and his career was stop and start and derailed and things like that. I'm going to go with, a number 1 phenom coming out of college, first overall pick as well too, but one who went the other way and excelled at his craft. And he is a Hall of Famer, and he's pretty much the prototypical quarterback of what you would think. And he's somebody who's big, strong arm, played his whole career with one team, retired, became an executive, and he just encapsulates all that's good about the quarterback position. I'm going to talk about the man who was one of my biggest gateways into football, and that's going to be John Elway. John Elway, drafted first overall from Stanford, does not want to go to the Baltimore Colts. I will play for the New York Yankees before I do that. So then works out a deal and goes to Denver and plays there for 16 years, appearing in 5 Super Bowls. And first football game I ever saw was Super Bowl 31. It was Brett versus Drew Bledsoe. And I didn't know anybody. I was just like, this is cool. I thought it was the Grey Cup. I was 10 at the time. And I was okay. I thought that's what the Grey Cup was. And it was neat. And I know the next year I was like, okay, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to follow this. I'm going to see what teams I really like and who I really like. And then ultimately you get to the Super Bowl and it's Green Bay's defending the championship against Denver. And I watched it with my cousin, and he's a big Green Bay fan, and he was at the time. So I said, you know what, I'll go for the Denver Broncos here. And they had the great story of John's looking for his first Super Bowl ring because he had 3 losses in the 80s to the Giants, the Washington Redskins, and narrowly got defeated by the San Francisco 49ers in 1990 as well too. Tight game there. So he was always being labeled as the one who will never win the big one. He's got the strongest arm in the league. He's what Da Vinci would have sculpted to be a quarterback, and he just couldn't get over the hump. And this game, as it goes on, he's got the iconic helicopter that's being still replayed and stuff. And it's the time when he wants it, and he's going to take the Super Bowl, and he's going to get it, and he does, and he beats Brett Favre, and they run it back, and he beats the Falcons the next season as well too. So basically, just for that, like I said, he was my real gateway into it. And then in my early childhood and my formative years, I was really following the Broncos, and they had drafted Garcia out of Michigan, and I was often between them and the Lions. They were the 2 teams that I had followed the most on proximity, and then I really liked the West Coast Broncos of that too. So for reading John Elway's biography, one of the many biographies I got piled up that I'll go to here later as we go on. But for that, it's just simple. It's it's always good to look back at some of those highlights that he did and some iconic moments. The 98.5-yard drive against Cleveland still stands up and holds up when you watch it. And you get the fact that he is an executive, and when he does sign Peyton Manning, and then they do win a Super Bowl against the Carolina Panthers, and true fans would know there's this incredible callback moment of when Pat Bowlen, the Broncos owner, this one's for John, when he finally wins. And then ultimately in 2016, Pat Bowlen's battling Alzheimer's, and John Elway's the GM, and he calls it back, and this one's for Pat. And I remember being at a party and I had goosebumps, and I'm like, no one is going to get that reference, but that is an incredible moment in John Elway's life to be able to give a Super Bowl to his mentor, Pat Bowlen, at the time. So like I said, for having the strong arm, there is another quarterback that will appear on my list next, who's kind of the modern day Elway. And just like I said, he's what I always envisioned what a quarterback to be, where, there are, Brett Favre's a popular gunslinger as well too, but Elway, the clutch, the fourth quarter comebacks, the look, the orange crushed jerseys. This one's a little more snug in the neck, so I didn't want to wrestle with it, but those highlights with those, and then they get to the more modern ones as well too. And like I said, just always got a soft spot for those Broncos teams. And like I said, having and following quarterbacks that played predominantly before I followed means I always have good highlights that I'm still discovering, and good moments and games and years. And you can go back to some of those old Super Bowl interviews and things and rediscover it for the first time. So that's one thing I always like about John. So John Elway, Denver Broncos, great. My number 4.
Nice. Yeah, you definitely can't argue with it. And he's one of those, great football personalities too. you never hear people badmouth about John Elway.
Well, unless you're Brian Flores, but I digress. AB, yeah, no doubt. Who you got for 3?
All right, it's time, guys. I'm gonna put on the Homer hat. It's time to get into some Niners, and so forever backing up. My number 2 is my number 3.
It's funny.
Of course, it is Steve Young. Steve Young was the quarterback that for the Niners that I watched actually the most. And I came in watching another gentleman that we'll be talking about later. But for my formative years, Steve Young was the quarterback of the Niners that I knew, and as in high school watching the '94 Super Bowl against the Chargers. I watched it at the Casey's on Huron Church that burned to the ground. Not after that game, but thankfully. But literally, me and my buddy were the only people watching in that place, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs, which apparently is a thing I do. And people were looking at me, and I didn't care because Steve Young was crushing it. And so you've got you've got a guy coming out of another BYU product who was up for the Heisman Trophy, and he was at the time looking to get drafted by the Bulls, I believe, and he did not like that, so he decided to sign with the newly formed USFL in the Los Angeles Express. Played there for a couple years and before the league dissolved, and then returned to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where he crapped the bed along with the rest of the team, which was back in the terrible Tampa years. And he just had an awful season and basically got traded for a couple of late picks to another team where he did substantially better. And so he got traded for a couple picks to be the backup to Joe Montana. And kind of sat there for a while and waited for his turn to come up, which to his credit, he stayed prepared and he was professional, and the coaches both all of his coaches talk about how prepared he was and how ready he was. And so when he got his chance to play, when Joe Montana got hurt, he came in and was ready to go. And so one such occasion when he got hurt, they were down by a touchdown to the Minnesota Vikings. Kind of went down, so he thought it was done, and so then he did this at the last, basically the last. There's a few minutes left in the game, but he comes in and does this, and so I saw a fun interview of Mike Holmgren, who was on the coaching staff of that particular team, talk about this play, and he was up in the booth watching the play, and he got so excited that he was screaming "run, run, run" and punching the plexiglass so hard that he broke his hands while watching this play. And I just thought that was hilarious. That he
trip over the
just
5-yard line,
like we talked about with Michael. Yeah. He didn't pull. He did Danny Dimes, right, and just collapsed. He made it in, but. Yeah. So you and so there's the big thing in the '94 Super Bowl was getting this back, forever backing up Joe, but no more. He got his moment to shine, and boy did he ever shine. And when you go through his stats, they're pretty substantial, and you have he's a 6-time passing rating leader but also he's in the top 10 passing rating of all time. And that's over history. He's in the top 10 passer rating. And yeah, that was when after he basically came in the league and he struggled to pass. He had the running ability. He had the play, the big play ability to make it with his legs, but he struggled to pass, and he went on to perfect his passing so much so that he had, like I said, top 10 passer rating of all time, accurate passing, especially in that West Coast offense. It just perfected it. And he's just one of those guys that, again, like we've talked about with other quarterbacks, he didn't come in, he came in the league, struggled, relegated to being a backup, put in his time, put in the work, put in the effort, and it paid off for him. And he became one of the all-time greats and a Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer. It's just a very inspirational sports story of, being humble, putting in your time, being ready, and knowing that you're going to get your shot, and he did, and it paid off for him. And so, like I said, I was very young when Joe Montana played. I got to see basically the tail end of his playing time with the 49ers, and obviously that's what got me into football to begin with. But Steve Young was the guy that I got to witness basically, from my formative years on. And it was just an exciting player to watch, both passing and scrambling, running the ball again.
Awesome. I knew you got your list. That's a great one too. He's one of the best. That's when you look in the history of football of like replacing a legend and coming in and forging your own identity. He's Rushmore of that. I mean, it's impossible for teams to replicate success when a Hall of Famer leaves to replace him with another Hall of Famer. And they do it with class and admirably. So yeah, Steve Young, great, and probably one of the best. And he was one of the first probably who made the jump to TV that successfully as an analyst. Like
he's very good. Like I'm biased in that I mean, he's obviously very intelligent guy, and it shows.
But even when I was in college, he was like a regular guest on Monday Night Footballs with on PTI, and he was always the 5 Good Minutes with Steve Young, and he was incredible, and he still is. He still does this, and he's incredible on ESPN. He's one of the best.
I just found out that he has a podcast that he breaks down week to week, all the stuff from football, and I was like, interesting. I might check that out.
Anything quick to add about Steve Young, Jimmy? What do you got?
I'll wait a little bit later.
Okay, perfect. This is great. I'm glad we're doubling up because we're flying now. We're getting out of here in 90 minutes. Jim, what do you got for number 3? Give us someone good.
All right. So for my number 3, we're going to go with another feel-good story, another guy a little dude who really overachieved in his career. Ended up playing the game for professional football for about 21 seasons, I believe.
Wow.
But didn't always get his fair shake, but when he did, he made the most out of it. And undersized, but oversized in heart. Doug Flutie's my number 3.
That was one I said. That was one I was like, that one's a lock for Jim.
I said that first. I said I had a few that haven't appeared yet, but the one Flutie I wrote for sure. You're a Flutie guy.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too. AB mentions about being an antenna kid. So was I. One of the things you can get with an antenna in Windsor is you get a lot of Detroit games. You can, on the right day, get some Cleveland games, but also back in the day, Global Television would always hook up for the Buffalo Bills feed, so you got to see a lot of Bills football back in the day. So there are a lot of fans in here of that team. And when I watched the Bills in the late 90s, there was this guy who I remember who played in the CFL, and I remember him as killing it with the Toronto Argonauts. But the backstory is so much more interesting than just that little bit. He starts out at Boston College. We've all seen the play. It's, ESPN, one of the great last-second plays, the Hail Flutie, beating Miami, beating Jimmy Johnson, beating Vinny Testaverde in the Orange Bowl on that last-second pass. Heisman Trophy winner in 1984. Doesn't go to the NFL because he's, again, undersized. So the New Jersey Generals, owned by some guy by the name of Donald Trump, decided to take a chance on him and pay him a big, huge money contract to come into the USFL, where he lights it up in his first year for, probably one of the more successful teams of that league. Unfortunately, the USFL folds the next year. The Bears own his rights, so he's brought into Chicago, and of course they're already set with Jim McMahon. But Mike Ditka is one of his biggest backers, and of course McMahon gets hurt in '86 after he gets suplexed. So surprisingly, did not know this, Doug Flutie actually started their '86 playoff game versus the Washington Redskins, and didn't have that great of a game, but neither did the rest of the team. But media team kind of pinned it on him. Released, goes to the Patriots for his first stint, and is actually doing very successful. But his coach, again, Raymond Berry, doesn't really believe in him all that much. He's grudgingly winning with him, and again gets out of favor in New England. Can't get anywhere in the NFL, so he decides, hey, I'm going to go up north. I'm going to play to the CFL. He's making big money up there. Goes to the BC Lions. Plays a couple years there, plays with his brother Darren, performing a great combination, a great quarterback to wide receiver combination. Goes to Calgary, wins his first of 3 Grey Cups there. Starting there, Jeff Garcia is backing him up. They're tearing it up offensively. Then he goes to the Toronto Argonauts, back-to-back Grey Cups. And he figures, I'm just going to play in the CFL. I'm going to be really successful here, make my money here, and retire. Buffalo calls him when he's about 35 years old and says, hey, want to give it one more chance? He does. Gets signed for a minimum contract. They have already signed who they think is going to be their quarterback of the future, Rob Johnson. But Flutie keeps outplaying his undersized, frame, and he becomes a renaissance man in Buffalo. And I wish I had the box of Flutie Flakes here.
Yeah,
became such a sensation that he had his own cereal, sold millions upon millions of boxes, raised money for his it's actually named after his son, the Doug Flutie Jr. Foundation for Autism Awareness, which is a great foundation, and has raised tens of millions of dollars for seeking a cure for autism. And Flutie becomes a superstar and a pop culture star in Buffalo because they love their football there. They loved the 70s Bills. They loved the 90s Bills with Jim Kelly. Doug Flutie's their guy now. And unfortunately, he's everyone's guy. He's the fans' guy, except he's not Ralph Wilson's guy, who decided to start Rob Johnson in the Music City Miracle game. And probably if they had Flutie in that game, there's no Music City Miracle, because he was that much better of a quarterback than Rob Johnson ever was. I'm sorry. You can't get sacked 8 times in a game and say you're a great quarterback. Maybe Joe Burrow can, but not Rob Johnson. But he moves on. He moves on to San Diego, where he mentors Drew Brees. And look what Drew Brees turned out to be. I mean, he became a beast for 20 years in the NFL and comes back to the Patriots, backing up Tom Brady, drop kicks an extra point in his last game of his
which
career,
was amazing. I think that is one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
Absolutely, too. And, the stats, I mean, kind of even for wins, but Doug Flutie there was always excitement when Doug Flutie was playing. He wasn't afraid to run. He wasn't afraid to make things happen by himself, but he could also rally his teammates behind him to do great things, especially when they believed in him like they did in Buffalo. And that's why they were such a fun team in the late 90s to watch. And he was such a fun guy to watch for me as a growing NFL fan in the late 90s. And Doug Flutie, number 3. I think there's few people that got more out of their talent than he ever did. So number 3, Doug Flutie.
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys that is universally respected and loved, just because he's a great dude. And like you see him again, you see him in interviews, and he's very humble and very, to the point where he's self-deprecating a lot, and he's just a guy that you can't help but like. I actually have a San Diego Doug Flutie jersey is my Doug Flutie jersey, and if I didn't think you were gonna have him on your list, in fact I knew you were gonna have him on your list, I would have put him on my list because I love him as well. It's just one of those guys that loves the game, gives everything, like you said, gives everything to the game, and you can't help but respect and love him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no doubt. And like I said, as you just touched on his NFL career, iconic moments, the iconic Hail Mary. So no kidding, college. So that's a great. Knew it would be on your list, man. That's an awesome choice. So are we going homers? Are we going homer time?
Oh boy.
Are we going homer time? I just said with my 4, we're gonna talk about, what a sculpted in a lab quarterback would have been. A big, tall country boy with a rocket arm, drafted first overall, and that was 1983. John Elway wasn't so much in my era, but I was a Lions season ticket holder in 2008, right there for 0-16. I went to every home game for the 0-16 season, and with that, we were rewarded the first overall pick, and we had taken our quarterback of the future, ended up being another team's quarterback of the future. But my number 3 is the Super Bowl participant for the Los Angeles Rams this season, Matthew Stafford, drafted first overall in 2009 from Georgia.
Oh, now I'm left out. I don't have one.
Yeah, I got 2. I got a blue and a white downstairs.
I'm good.
So I went with the Rams jersey on this, and like I said, because I can respect like an ex-wife who we ended things very, very, very admirably. We are so happy to see them thriving in their new relationship. So Matthew Stafford, he is the only current quarterback on this list, and he is my favorite currently playing, getting the due that he deserves. For years he comes into the league and he starts as a rookie, and the first 2 years are very snake bit with injuries, and you start thinking, okay, is he made of glass? What's going on here? And he got hurt at one of the home games I was at, I think in his second year against the Jets, and he was it might have been on a safety, and it just looked, you're like, this is terrible. He barely went down, and he's done for the season. What kind of quarterback is this going to be? Comes back, turns out he's going to be one of the strongest arms, throw 70 times a game quarterback that the NFL has ever seen, and to a detriment of his coaching, and he gets a defensive minded in Jim Schwartz, and then they switch to an offensive guy in Jim Caldwell, and he never really quite clicks. Nobody can really utilize his talents in the proper way. Like I said, Schwartz has him throwing 50, 60 times, and he's throwing 20 times alone to Calvin in double, triple coverage in that. And a lot of them are connecting, but, he's throwing a lot of picks, and, we're local to Detroit, and the Detroit market can't really kind of get a handle on him, but always loved him, always loved Matthew Stafford, and he was always perpetually my guy. The Cleveland game where he's mic'd up and they win that on the last second touchdown where it's out, and he's mic'd up is incredible football history. And I'm so glad we had that. And he started 3 playoff games for us. He's 0-3, but he was a quarterback that took the Lions to the playoffs. Partnership with him and Calvin Johnson was incredible. He was Calvin's guest when Calvin went into the Hall of Fame. Matthew Stafford, this last offseason, was there with his wife, Kelly, and that's just nice that they were friends off the field as well, too. They had such a great rapport. Getting the due from the mass football media, going 3-0 in the playoffs this year, and taking the Los Angeles Rams to the Super Bowl to face off with the Cincinnati Bengals. To be determined. Hopefully, by the time some people are watching this, he'll be a Super Bowl champion. Can you imagine how exciting that would be? So there aren't many Lions fans that are openly cheering against them. I think any Lions fan I know have been universally accepting. We know Adam Fontaine. Hopefully he's watching. Sup, Adam. He and I have been on this from the get-go. Loved it. Loved the deal. A lot of people who I know, Jim, have been late to the party, cheering for the Rams to tank, and now that the Rams are in, they're cheering for them. But ultimately, it's a feel-good story. one last thing that I admire about Stafford, and not only just his exceptional playing ability, when he does leave Detroit, granted he didn't have the wins that he would have liked, but has a 9-minute farewell documentary talking about what the city means to him and his wife, and how the team supported him with her brain cancer surgery, and how he will always love Detroit. And it's on YouTube right now, and you're just like, oh my God, this guy, like, again, Tom left New England with 6 Super Bowls, and that's kind of it, and like a thing in the paper. But then you see Matthew leaving, and you're like, oh my God, this guy put a film crew to document all his time at Detroit. This is incredible. I'm crying. So again, for the 11 years of mediocrity, but not his fault, and that he is enjoying success elsewhere, I am so happy to put Matthew Stafford as the only active quarterback on my 3 favorite quarterbacks of all time. So God bless you, Matt. Good luck on Monday. Go Rams.
On Monday.
No, Sunday. Whatever. Okay, I said a lot before I said that. So good luck in the Super Bowl on Sunday, Matthew.
All right. My number 2, you can probably guess, is there. You said Matthew Stafford's playing against the Cincinnati Bengals, and I've heard the term Joe Cool being thrown around for Joe Burrows, which is garbage, because there is only one Joe Cool, and that is Joseph Clifford Montana Jr. And he is the true Joe Cool of the NFL, Mr. Comeback Kid. Joe Montana, one of the coolest quarterbacks to ever play the game, not just because of his cool demeanor on the field, but his cool demeanor off the field. He's just a really cool dude. And California, hangs out with Hugh Lewis, and yeah, it's just an all around dude. Though the 82 San Francisco 49ers are basically the team that got me into football. That was basically when I started watching football, and 49ers were obviously dominant at that time. And so I latched on. And so whenever San Francisco's doing well and I'm wearing my San Francisco gear, people are always like, "Oh, you jumped on the bandwagon." I said, "Yeah, I did jump on the bandwagon. In 1982, I was 5 years old, and this gentleman was the quarterback." And you talked about that Broncos game, and let's watch this Broncos game right here. Oh, to my man Jerry Rice. Joe Montana has one of the purest. He's one of the purest pocket passer things. Just got a great, a flawless pocket deliverer, and he's not like the other guys that we talked about with scrambling quarterback. He's just basically, and it's just calmly making the plays that need to be played. He's obviously a very intelligent quarterback. And here's the one against the Bengals. So put burning Joe Burrow. Screw you, bro. Joe Burrow. Here's Joe Cool getting it done against your team. And then you got this play right here against my most hated team, Dallas Cowboys, who we took care of this year with the catch to Clark, RIP. Joe is just look at hold on, I got one more gift. Oh no, I do not. I thought I had another one. It's from his commercial that he does where he demonstrates his 4 Super Bowl rings.
Sure.
To somebody he's talking to. And it's you look at his career, and the guy is just a winner from the word go. He came into the league and just was a guy who did not lose. And you look at when Brady was losing the Super Bowls to the New York Giants, there was a lot of memes going around of the most interesting man in the world kind of memes, where Joe Montana was like, when I make it to the Super Bowl, I don't lose, and like that kind of stuff. And it's true. Like he's just got a guy that consistently got it done, and in the biggest of games, and has the hardware to prove it. with his Super Bowl MVPs, with his NFL MVPs, and he's just one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And like I said earlier, with Steve Young, I'm living in this. It was tough to watch those games. It was the few games that I caught as a kid were the ones that I latched onto, but I didn't get to see. I didn't get to see a lot of Niners games up until later on into the 90s. But even then, I didn't get to see it being an antenna kid. But I got this when I did. I was all about it, and you watch some of the games now, and it's just an exciting quarterback to watch. Just watch him, rise to the occasion, and he had a tough break later on with injuries, as a lot of guys do. Ends up going to KC, and he doesn't have the same success as he did with the Niners, because they're clearly not the same kind of team. But he still plays well, even with those KC teams, and struggles down the stretch of more and more injuries, and it catches up to him. But he's just one of those guys that you look and you just can't help but admire what he does on the field and off the field, just because he, like I said, he's a cool dude. But yeah, Joe Montana.
So, I know how much of a Montana mark you are. I forgot I brought this up here because I knew he'd be on your list. I bought this book years ago. One of the many, like I said, I got a lot of books here.
I do have his McFarlane figure in there. I was going to bring it in, but it's bulky. But
the Joe stories are great. The John Candy at the Super Bowl, 4-0 in the Super Bowl, hanging out with Huey Lewis. It's just like, that's the coolest guy in the 80s, man. He's the king of the 80s. And that's why, again, before my time, but I hate the Joe Cool comparisons for Burrow, because it's like, no, there's only one. Technically two if you count Snoopy. But there's only one Joe Cool, and it's Joe Montana. He's the coolest cat there is in any room. He's Kevin Costner. If Kevin Costner played football, like he's the coolest white guy there is.
How dare you disrespect Joe Namath like that? Who is the OG Joe Cool? But no, Joe. You watch the Joe Montana highlights, especially of that drive in the Super Bowl 23. My favorite play is not the pass to Taylor. It's when he throws that crossing route to Jerry Rice, and not only do one set of Bengals teammates crash into each other, two sets of Bengal teammates. So 4 people crash into each other. Well, he hits him on that crossing route. It's just one of the most beautiful things to watch. Just the mastery of the West Coast offense that he had, and the pressure that Steve Young put him under and Bill Walsh put him under almost galvanized him to perform some of that stuff later on in his career, when people thought he was washed up. People, after the 86 and 87 playoff debacles that they had, where he got beat up by the Giants and pulled in the Vikings game, he showed he's tough as they come. And then carving up Buddy Ryan too, like those highlights in the 89 regular season and the 93 playoffs with the Chiefs, just awesome to watch him come back in those games and just beat up on the blitzing 46. So it's just Joe Montana, and one of the coolest football names ever, Joe Montana. Like it sounds so.
I kind of alluded to it, and Jerry Rice being my favorite player of all time, and to see the chemistry and the chemistry that those two have, and being ultimate professionals in work ethic, and striving to be the best, and it showed on the field, the chemistry that they had over the years. And later on you have Steve Young have that similar chemistry, but they didn't have the chemistry that Joe and Jerry was. It's like they were in each other's minds all the time, and knew where Joe knew where he was going to be at all times. And it's just like, it's poetry in motion on the football field.
I'll talk about another factor that involves in that with my number 1, but I will get to my number 2 right now, because I think we're all leading to that. And my number 2, Scott, you've already talked about him anyways. Guys, you stole with your number 3s. You stole both my 2 and my 1. I mean,
oh wow, okay.
Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And I mean, I don't. And Scott, you were talking about it, and it's like kind of like his winning is the Lions' loss. And I don't begrudge Matthew Stafford's success. Like, I would have liked to seen the Lions benefit from those draft pick trades that they got from the Rams. But I'm not going to begrudge his success. Like, and I'm listening to talk radio on 97.1 The Ticket, and it's so toxic with some of these reporters and whatnot that, just have almost a revisionist history of, Stafford's like junk and he underwhelmed in Detroit. I don't think he did. I think he, got more out of that team than a lot. I only think he really had one really good team put behind him. And even that was an incomplete team in 2014. They had the best defense, but he still never had a running game. I mean, Javid Best, Michael LaShore, Amir Abdullah, Kerryon Johnson, so many flameouts. Like, they never gave him a running game. Reggie Bush was good for like a year with him, but
Reggie Bush on his third or fourth team at the time.
Yeah.
Post Dolphins didn't have much tread, but agreed, no doubt. So he made the best team. Like, they gave him the receivers. They had Calvin, and they got in the draft, and you got the Marvin Jones and the Golden Tates and stuff.
Yeah.
And he had to make it work.
And that's the other thing, too, is that he's actually gotten more out of those receivers than some other teams have. Kenny Golladay struggled with the Giants this year. Marvin Jones didn't do much with Trevor Lawrence and the Jags. Golden Tate hasn't achieved what he did. He didn't achieve what he did with Seattle, and he certainly hasn't achieved it with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Giants afterwards. I mean, this guy has gotten a lot out of players, made them Pro Bowl caliber players to the point where they're getting multi-million-dollar contracts. Like, I think Stafford's finally getting the respect he deserves, and I think it's about time that he did. I mean, you don't get to 50,000 yards in the NFL by just, sitting on your duff doing nothing. He's put the team in a far better position than a lot of other people would. I mean, would you rather go back to the days of Joey Harrington, who can't fucking master the West Coast offense after 4 years of trying? Like, they have to bring in Jeff Garcia late in his mid-30s to try and get something out of the team. Like, this guy gave his heart and soul. He played dinged up and damaged a lot of times. Like, even in the 2018 season with Patricia, he got roughed up in the first game with a lot of back issues, and he still gave it his all. So it's about damn time this guy is getting his due. And I'm gonna be honest. I hope the Rams cream the Bengals and the Super Bowl. I'd like to see him double them up, like 34-17 or something, just so this guy can finally cement his Hall of Fame. Like, if he wins that game, he'll get the Hall of Fame recognition he deserves. Win the game, win the MVP, do what you need to do in that game, and finally, let's get the guy the respect he deserved and had deserved for a while. Because, I mean, everyone wants to glorify an Aaron Rodgers, and if the game goes right on Sunday, they'll have the same amount of Super Bowls. So
of course, true that.
Exactly.
So Matthew Stafford, my number 2. I give him my respect. Hopefully, after Sunday, the world will give him his. So, yeah, I don't think there's much more to say about him because we've beaten that topic to death, but Stafford at 2.
Awesome. That's great. That's a great choice. I agree with you. Go Rams. Guys, we're going to get into the fun stuff now, too. My number 2, anybody who knows me knows that I worship the ground of this former NFL player. Came in at a time when I was getting into adulthood. He and I are similarly in age, and he's already been somebody who inspired me and as not only on the field, but off the field. And he's one of the most famous men in the world. And he, could have revolutionized the position. But what a winner. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about Tim Tebow. My number 2. Tim Tebow is a guy that I loved when he was playing in Florida. I loved that Florida Gators team. I loved the national championships. I loved the Heisman. I loved the speech. You will not see anybody work harder than me, than I am dedicated to this team. I loved how religious he was, and unflinchingly so, and able to to teach people about it. He puts 316 on his eye black, and the next day there's 100 million Google searches what 316 means. That rules. That's power. That's power and influence that the sport of football can't buy. You have to be a cult of personality. And in my lifetime, short of a handful of athletes, there is nobody who is more of a cult of personality than Tim Tebow. So Tim Tebow's drafted a lot of question marks. He throws from the side. He's more of a fullback. He's too bulky. Can't be a quarterback. Josh McDaniels, God bless him, drafts him in the first round, 25th pick in the 2010 draft. I was at rock bottom at this time watching, and I went nuts. I started clapping, applauding. I was so happy. I was still, like I said, talking with Elway. Always have a soft spot for the Broncos, and my favorite college player of all time was going there to be the starting quarterback. What can I tell you about the time there? Was the backup to Kyle Orton. Kyle Orton goes down. Team's bad. McDaniels is fired, and they put him in as the starter. And it's not pretty, but they're winning games. He's going like 5 for 9 with like 70 yards passing, touchdown, and like 60 yards rushing, and they're beating the Raiders and the Chiefs. And there's this unbelievable moment when he runs it in with no time left against the Texans, and there's this great, going back to the mic'd up, if you watch it, where he runs over to his coach at the time and says, "There's only one person who carries the ball here." And if I was coach, I'd be like, "Fuck yeah, Tim, it's you. You do it. You go ball out and you get us a win." And that's exactly what he did. And like I said, for as popular he was, on the field, you get off the field, you get the Tebow kneeling. What a sensation that was for a minute, guys. Remember that? People were going nuts doing that. You want to talk about how he transcends? Guys, I have my Tim Tebow merch here. I have his documentary, Everything in Between. I have his first book, Through My Eyes, that he wrote. The follow-up called Shaken. I bought and read that. And guys, I also have his Christian workshop book, Know Who You Are and Live Like It Matters, where he talks about Bible verses that mean something to you and you follow along and things like that. So this is a guy that I like way beyond the football field as well too. So just for what a winner he was, the great moment, the ESPY Award moment for best moment, the touchdown in overtime to Demaryius Thomas, RIP, and how, he's just the positive attitude. He's a great celebrity. He's a great ambassador for the sport. Didn't make it in any of his stops there, was a practice squad player with the Giants, the Eagles, and more recently, embarrassingly so, coming back as a tight end for his old friend Urban Meyer with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But, we'll always have those special memories in Denver, and we'll certainly always have that overtime game against Pittsburgh. So God bless you, Tim. You have done so much for the sport of football and minor league baseball and just faith in general. So God bless you for it. I love Tim Tebow. He's a guy I will always watch an interview with. He's still making the rounds. He's a great analyst for college football. And when he still does the podcast circuit on Pardon My Take or Pat McAfee, I will always listen to him because he's got a lot. He's an incredible human off the field as well. So love you, Tim. You're my number 2 favorite quarterback of all time.
All right, guys, we're here. We're at number 1s. I'm going to do a little strip tease here, and we're going to talk about, just some guy. I don't know if you guys have heard.
I didn't know you had that jersey.
I don't know.
Me neither. Yeah, that's just a shock to me.
You guys have seen me in this jersey. Come on.
Maybe. That's great. I don't know. That's awesome.
I hosted so many trivias at Dugout, and I never saw you in that jersey once.
Well, I have worn this jersey many, many times. And so I'm going to say my number 1 is a quarterback of all time, going back to his time in Michigan, would be the GOAT, Tom Brady. And it's very fitting that this comes on the week of his retirement announcement. And, I don't need to fill you in on the accolades. This guy literally has won everything at some point. He's won 7 Super Bowls. He's the most winning quarterback of all time. He's played for 22 seasons. And basically, like we've said is a very fiery guy, and like is a guy who put in the work, put in the time, put in the effort, gave 110% at all times, and just wanted to win. And he has one of those stories like we've talked about where he's an unlikely guy to do it. He's not a number one pick, gets picked. We all know the stories. He gets picked super late in the draft. Nobody's really giving him a chance. He's backing up Drew Bledsoe, gets his shot, and makes the best of it. And it's all up from there. And I don't need to go into how great he was. Everyone knows how great he is. The only people at this point that are saying anything bad about him being the greatest of all time are the haters who bring up the nonsense of Deflategate and that kind of crap.
Literally, it's not even that much this week, to be honest.
I was literally, like the thing that you're holding over is that his team deflated footballs, and that's your detraction from the game. A thing that tons of other quarterbacks in the league have said, yes, we overinflate or deflate our footballs too. And in a game that they destroyed them with 4 rushing touchdowns in, and that's your one detraction from him being the greatest and calling him a cheater, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? He had no impact on that game. He is the greatest of all time, guys. It's not even a debate now. Like if anyone who's debating that now, and you can see, say, oh, he's a system quarterback. He goes to Tampa and wins another one in his 40s. It with a whole nother team, takes a team that could never get over the hump, even with the same high power offense, and he takes them over the hump and gets them a Super Bowl. In his last season as an NFL quarterback, he leads the team in all quarterback categories in passing yards, passing touchdowns, and he literally has 0 to prove. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's now retired. He has literally nothing to prove to anyone at this point. And I think he just, it's time for him, and we're gonna hear about it for the next 6 months, I'm sure. All the Tom Brady talk until something else big happens. I'm sure I'm gonna put the Tom Brady talk during the Super Bowl. What are you going to put it at? 20 plus times they're going to mention Tom Brady retired during the Super Bowl, and we go with the over under on 20 times. Talk about him.
Well,
the prop bet.
Pre-game shows are like 8 hours now, so probably like 50 times.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying actually during the game, but he's a guy that people love to hate him because he just wins. He's just one of the most winning quarterbacks of all time. One of the big time reasons that I latched on to Tom Brady even early on was because of fantasy football. Tom Brady was a guy who was always drafted super late in my fantasy football team because he wasn't at the beginning. He wasn't putting up huge touchdown numbers. He wasn't putting up huge stat lines. He was putting consistent. It was always consistent. And so guys in my leagues that I play in all hated him. And so I would be able to pick him up in late rounds as my quarterback. And he was on many, many, many of my fantasy teams over the years because my friends all hated Tom Brady, and I was the benefactor of that. And so definitely one of the big reasons why I latched onto him was because of his consistency, and he didn't have down years other than the 1 year that he got hurt and didn't play, but all the rest of the time he's consistently awesome. And I again, we could sit here and talk forever about all of his stats and all of his accomplishments, but we don't need to because everyone's talking about them right now.
Yeah, he's got 3 incredible Hall of Fame careers. The first 3 Super Bowls leading up to the undefeated season, and then the 10s, and then the Tampa Bay stuff. He's incredible. He's a perfect athlete. He's a perfect human being, and the supermodel wife, the ex who's an actress. Like he's the best. He's the best.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, apart from Rob Parker, who's like an idiot commentator for Fox Sports and locally here in Detroit, I mean, not you can't deny Tom Brady's excellence. I mean, from Michigan all the way through New England to the Bucks. I mean, when the guys played in 10 Super Bowls, I mean, they always used to talk about Otto Graham, how he played in 10 consecutive championship games. Well, Otto Graham played when there was like 12 teams in the league. To do it when there's 32 teams in the league in
And
the era of,
free agency, in the era of free agency, that's the key is when you can build a team and consistently have a team that you can throw money at. That's one thing, but when there's parity because of free agency and you're still consistently getting, and you talked about Matt Stafford basically like building receivers. Look at all the receivers that Tom Brady played with who went to other teams and were hot garbage. You have your Deion Branches and, your Givens and all these, schlubs like Wes Welker played for him and Peyton Manning. And that was basically it. And like you put Wes Welker, you look at Wes Welker before he comes on to the Patriots with the Miami team, hot garbage. You look at a lot of these guys that are basically Tom Brady comes in and he makes these guys and he wins Super Bowls without receivers. You look at there's teams where his number one receiver is a guy who would be a third stringer, the third receiver on another team, and like he just consistently wins. And people are like, "Oh, he had Aaron Hernandez and Gronk." I'm like, okay.
He didn't have Gronk in 2016, if I remember, with the Falcons. I think he only had Edelman that game.
Yeah.
And he came back from 28-3 to freaking win.
The other thing, they're both second round picks. Hernandez late, Edelman's like a 6th round converted quarterback. So he has people raise their game to be on his level. It's a TB12 method, man. It's exactly what it is. When when you're playing with him, he demands excellence.
And in that Super Bowl, the Super Bowl that he lost to the Eagles, which people bring up his Super Bowl losses to the 2 to Giants and the 1 to Eagles. You look at his stats in that Super Bowl, and it's one of the greatest Super Bowl performances in the history of Super Bowls. His stat line is insane in that game, and he lost that game. So you look at that game, and he had pretty much one of the single greatest games as a quarterback in a game that he lost the Super Bowl in, and like even in his losses, he's still extremely excellent. Like you just cannot bash the guy. He's incredible. He's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, he kept him in that game, and we all know who ran that defense. Fuck you, Matt Patricia. Anyway.
Well, they go and hire him literally right after the Super Bowl.
It was the next day. I was incredibly unhappy because I said he's going to be our coach. Let's not end that on a dour note. Jim, come on, go to a one. Why are we talking? Tom Brady talking about the Matt Patricia. Jim, who do you got?
All right. My number one, and let me find my cursor here. AB already alluded to him. I mean. But I'll try to cover a couple points that he didn't with this guy. Steve Young, growing up, was my favorite quarterback. I love the San Francisco 49ers. I love the Young to Rice combination. The thing that was different from the Montana to Young or Montana to Rice, as opposed to Young to Rice, look at what he's throwing. He's throwing left-handed. So that was the thing that Jerry Rice always said was a little bit more difficult with Steve Young. Then everything was backwards with the offense, which kind of worked, which I think Bill Walsh was kind of thinking that's might not be a bad idea to have this athletic wonderkind who throws left-handed, because now if I sub Young in, everything's kind of backwards. The blind side becomes the right side as opposed to the left side. This guy can roll out to the left and make all of our patterns are crossed over, so it confuses the defense even more. But I think Steve Young is the prototype for what people want to find in a quarterback today. Guy who has a great arm, who can who can get out of the pocket and run if he needs to. And as a kid, Guy was my favorite. I always rooted for him. It killed me every year when the Packers were kind of having their way with the 49ers from 95 to 97. Just would make me miserable during the playoffs to watch Favre win another effing game against Steve Young. But finally, 98, the catch 2. Remember watching that as a kid. He throws that bullet to Terrell Owens in the end zone in double coverage with under 10 seconds left. Nearly stumbles out of the pocket. Steve Young and stumbling. I don't know what goes on with him sometimes. But he throws that rocket, and that's that. He has those signature moments to run, obviously. The 6 touchdown game, breaking Montana's record in Super Bowl 29. Get the monkey off my back.
Nope.
But always, Steve Young had left you wanting a little bit more too, because AB alluded to it and Scott alluded to it, was the fact that he was commentating so much is that he was hurt a lot too, and he just had so many concussions that just ate his late career out. Like 95 to 97, he must have had about 4 or 5 concussions that just cut into his career so badly.
And you look at, people criticize the penalties now for the hits on the quarterback, hits to the head, and you look at the hits that these guys took, like this Steve Young took, and you talked about quarterbacks getting suplexed and stuff like that. And that's why they put these rules into place. And like, as much as it sucks sometimes to take some of those penalties of guys hitting quarterbacks in the head, you're literally like shortening your quarterback's career, like you said, almost in half, when you're allowing that kind of stuff. And you look at a lot of the brutal hits that these quarterbacks would take back then, and when they're completely unexpecting it is the worst part about it.
Yeah. And I mean, some were fluky too. Like, I mean, he got hit in the knee by Warren Sapp in 97, which kind of derailed it. But some of them were when he was sliding feet first. And I think he got hit by the Chiefs one time, like 96, if I remember. And of course, the one that ended his career, unfortunately, Monday Night Football against the Cardinals in 99, gets blindside by Aeneas Williams when Lawrence Phillips missed the block. So that always made me sad, because I wanted to see more of Steve Young, because he was always I felt he was one of the fun players to watch, the combination with him and Jerry Rice. Obviously, he had T.O. there as well, Garrison Hurst. Like the late 90s 49ers were always a fun team, but they started getting injured, unfortunately, and older, and it just kind of ruined them. But I always have those memories, 94, watching him finally getting over and beating the Cowboys, and kind of having their way with them for the rest of the 90s, and then beating Favre in that 98 wildcard game was always an awesome sight. But yeah, Steve Young, I have his jersey hanging around somewhere in the house, but
it's the other room I was wearing a couple weeks ago, and it failed me. I'm sad to say that I wore it, and the Niners were playing garbage, and I took it off and put Jerry on, and they ended up winning against Green Bay. So,
well, I think mine would fail me for another reason with this big gut that I have. But needless to say, Steve Young did a absolutely admirable job for replacing Joe Montana and continuing the 49ers' great legacy into the 90s. They were the class organization of the league for 20 years, and without a doubt, Steve Young, growing up, my favorite quarterback at number 1.
Cool. Great. So I'll take us out of here on this. It's funny that you say earlier we were talking about Joe Cools and Jim, my advice, if anything moving forward, is let's just wait and see how things play out before you say how I'm not giving respect or due to a certain other Joe quarterback. Because that being said, my number 1 is the original Broadway Joe. Coolest man.
Don't blame Jim. He's struggling.
Who's ever been on. This is a man who transcends sports. So for that, my number 1 favorite quarterback
I could give a care less about the teamster. I got it.
Is Joe Willie Namath, who, again, he was one of the first major celebrities to transcend football, being drafted out of Alabama and getting to the Jets of the AFL. We all know the incredible upset of the Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III and the guarantee. like I said, Joe is a Hollywood icon on the football field. Were his skills up to par with both of yours number ones? No, of course not. But he was able to get there when it mattered most, and he was able to, like I said, transcend football on it and become a superstar in that regard. You know, he's a guy who you guys allude to the Susie Colbert incident. I'm not going to talk about that, but there is a guy who says he likes his Johnny Walker red and his women blonde, and God bless him for it. So he's the one who said it's un-American to have a beautiful woman and not take her for a drink every now and then. So Joe, you know, retired well before I was even born. You know, you hear about how tragic that Rams season went, and you know, aside from the one Super Bowl season, he wasn't quite the quarterback to lead the Jets anywhere towards anything but mediocrity. But goddamn if he didn't do it. And he did it when it mattered the most, and he guaranteed it, and he pulled it off. And like I said, he transcended. He got into films. He did the Brady Bunch spots. He did the commercials, the fur coats. He's a guy who could just eminent swag. And that's what we want from our quarterbacks. We want our quarterback to be the most confident person in the room. We want him to be the coolest. We want him to be the leader. We want all the guys to look at him and ask what they want to do. It was the best thing about Montana, and it's the best thing about Namath. So there's something about both of them being the coolest guys they can for their positions. So get out of here on that. Like I said, there's tons of it. And like I said, when you go back through the YouTube highlights and the interviews and the old Johnny Carson stuff and the sit downs and the Dick Cavett shows, and Joe's a regular guest in those, and it's all new to me as I experience it, and it's timeless, and you can always fill in the gaps on that. So like I said, for somebody who transcends and the sport of football, and he was the first celebrity to put the NFL in the Super Bowl era on the map. And he's still doing it. He's still a star. It's his man in 2021, 2022, and he's still the coolest guy in the room, man. He goes in there, and he's the king of New York. So Joe Willie Namath, Broadway Joe, is my favorite quarterback of all time.
Nice. Cool.
Well, guys, this was a wonderful list. Got to share our 5. It was an incredible list, not a lot of overlap, and we all got to experience our different tastes. So this was wonderful. I'm happy we got to do this experiment. Anything else before we get out of here, guys?
Super Bowl predictions. Let's do that.
Yeah, Rams 28-24.
I will say I'm gonna make it closer. Every game has gone to overtime or like within a field goal, so I'm gonna say 27-24 Rams.
I think the talent finally shows on the Rams. The delta between the Rams and the Bengals talent level. I'm saying 34-17 Rams.
Right.
I'm saying Stafford goes for 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Wins the MVP that he finally gets his justification.
They love it. That's great.
Are we going to pick MVPs?
Yeah, pick an MVP.
All right, I will take Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald's going to have four sacks.
I like that.
Okay, and then it's fun. I'll take Cooper Kupp. I could have gone Wild instead of Odell, but I'll say Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp will have 12 catches, 170 and 2 touchdowns, so they'll give it to Cooper.
All right.
Cool. Awesome, guys. Pleasure talking football with you as always. We got a lot of stuff coming on the go. I'm sure we'll touch on a lot. This gives us a lot of avenue to cover. So awesome, guys. Anything else?
I think we're good.
Go Niners 2022.